Welcome everybody to our season 2 finale of Salon West. Today we are joined by Bill Weihl. He will be talking about why companies should, big tech companies in particular, should lobby for bold and equitable climate policy. So for those of you who haven't joined us before, ClimateAction.tech is a community of tech professionals with the goal to inspire and empower each other to take climate action. We run this call to share ideas and facilitate conversation within the community. And we now run this call both in Western and Eastern friendly time zones. So keep an eye out in our Salon channel for all of those. So I don't want to take away any of the limelight from Bill. So I will let Bill introduce yourself and the talk and then just hand it over to you.
Thank you. I'm going to talk about why companies should lobby and a bit about what they should lobby for around climate. And I want to apologize just up front. I've had some issues with my voice recently, so if I sound a little drunk, I'm not, sadly. Maybe later, but not right now. Anyway, so this is me, former director of sustainability at Facebook, former green energy czar at Google, now a comic book character across the internet. Probably my first and last opportunity for that. But I spent 6 years at Google leading their clean energy work, and then 6 years at clean energy and climate, and then 6 years at Facebook leading their broader sustainability effort. And about 3 years ago, a little over 3 years ago, Facebook about a year and a half ago, started ClimateVoice. Our mission is to mobilize the workforce, all of you current employees, students as future employees, to urge companies to go all in on climate, everything they do in their business practices, their operations, their supply chain, their products, and especially in their advocacy for climate policy. And the reason for our focus on policy is there's lots of great stuff happening on climate, and lots more that needs to happen. But this has been true for years, but this year we're at an even more critical point on climate. We need to cut emissions in half by 2030. And we need innovation, we need finance, we need voluntary action, but to move at that speed and scale, we need public policy in Washington, D.C., in state capitals, in other countries. And we have a moment right now in D.C. with a climate-friendly administration, with the Democrats having narrow control of both the House and the Senate, that we could pass potentially really historic, bold, and equitable climate policy. But it's not a slam dunk, not easy. And we're facing similar issues in other countries and other regions where I'd say things aren't as broken and stuck as they are in the US, but even in the EU and in the UK and in Asia, things are not moving as fast as they need to. So the main reason for that, in my view, but I'm far from alone, fossil fuel companies are spending large sums of money using every ounce of influence they have on climate to stymie progress. And for the last almost 2 decades, fossil fuel companies have been outspending pro-climate interests, NGOs and others, by about 10 to 1. And it makes sense. They have a lot of money, and real climate policy threatens their business model. So it makes sense they might spend a lot to protect that. They're not just spending money. You may have seen, those of you in Europe, the UK almost certainly did. Channel 4 in the UK, I think it was just last week or maybe the week before, did an expose. They had a video of an ExxonMobil lobbyist, thought he was being interviewed for a job, but in fact, he was being encouraged to actually speak the truth. And he said things like what are on the slide here. Basically, they've been denying the science. They've been using misinformation and disinformation and front groups and you name it to drive inaction and stymie progress. And some of the tricks, he says there's nothing illegal. It wouldn't surprise me if they'd done some things that are illegal. But certainly what they've done, in my view, is unethical and really runs counter to what the society and the world needs to make progress on climate. So they're lobbying really hard. They're pouring money into political campaigns in the US and other places where that's allowed. They're using every form of influence they have. On the other side, question is, where's tech in particular? Tech is an enormous sector. The 5 biggest US tech companies are, I don't know what percentage of the S&P 500 these days, 20 or 30. They're huge, they're profitable. They have a lot of influence. They have large and growing government affairs teams. They, as it turns out, are not really lobbying very much. Out of their total lobbying, the 5 big tech companies, so Amazon, Apple, Google, Facebook, Microsoft, out of their total lobbying activity, according to Influence Maps report from January, 4% of their lobbying activity goes to climate, which is really small. So this is not a strategic priority. And in fact, big oil, 38% of their lobbying activity is on climate-related policies. So they are just crushing tech and everyone else. And the result is really slow progress on the kinds of policies that we need. So our mission is to ultimately get companies to really take a stand, make climate a strategic priority across everything they do, including advocacy. Our current campaign is focused on the big 5 US tech companies, and we asked employees, we've now got thousands of signatures on the petition. We want more, hope all of you who haven't signed will sign. We asked employees why they want their company to take a stand. And one said, big tech is the only sector that has the clout and financial backing to stand up to big oil. Another said, all the companies who want to stand on the right side of history need to push for urgent and immediate action. And so it's, you look at what these companies are doing, and I was involved in a lot of this when I was at Google and Facebook. They're buying clean energy. They're doing amazing things in some cases with their products. Google Earth and Microsoft has a huge AI initiative focused on earth science and so on. All of this is really vital. And without public policy to drive really rapid deployment of wind, solar, EVs, EV charging infrastructure, heat pumps, etc., we're not even going to come close to cutting emissions in half by 2030. So if companies really care about climate and believe it's a crisis, now is the time for them to stand up and help get those kinds of policies in place. So our campaign, it's called 1 in 5 for 1.5. And the URL is there. We're asking, qualitatively asking these companies and others, but the public campaign is focused on these 5. We're asking them to make climate a strategic lobbying priority. And concretely, we're asking them to devote 1 in 5 of their lobbying dollars to climate, to equitable climate policy aimed at keeping warming below 1.5 degrees C. In 2020, those 5 companies spent $63 million on federal lobbying. And if they allocated 20% of that money to climate, it could completely change the game in Washington. And if they used all the forms of influence they have, including, they regularly run contests when they're looking to cite a new data center, or think about Amazon's HQ2, the beauty contest they ran for that a couple of years ago. They have influence that goes beyond the money they spend on lobbying. It's really about making clear to policymakers that lack of progress on climate will affect where they do business, where they invest, where they expand. And real progress on climate will similarly have an effect on the other side. So that's the end of the slides and the presentation. Happy to have answer questions and hear what you guys think.